Hey guys, and welcome to this video. In this video, we're going to be discussing the different types of grinders, the basics of grinding coffee beans, and some pointers to develop proper grinding technique. You'll notice that all grinders have a hopper. They have a grinding mechanism that the hopper feeds into, which then goes into the grinding chamber, and then that is either dispensed manually by hand through the grinding lever or automatically in another fashion. They all have a space for this portafilter to sit on, and you may or may not have to tamp yourself. This is the dial to control the grinder, so we can turn that on to grind and then we turn it off when we don't need it. But effectively, that is the stock standard prototype. If you understand how this works, you're going to understand how any other grinder on the market works. This is the hopper on top. This is the little adjustment measure, so we can turn that right or left to change how coarse or fine it is. Then we have the grinding chamber here. The grinding mechanism is inside. It runs through the hopper to get to the grinding mechanism, gets ground up, and then gets dispensed into the grinding chamber. That's the grinding chamber there. It gets a fair bit of work, a fair bit of use. Basically it gets dispensed through the hopper into the grinding mechanism and then into this grinding chamber. Then we have our lever on the side here that we dispense. There's a little hole and a little platform here, and when the platform moves across, the grinds go into the portafilter. So the portafilter sits neatly in here. And if you fit it in there, the grinds are going to go straight in. Then we have this little bench guard. So the bench guard here is just to prevent any scratches from going onto the bench. So on the portafilter itself, it's got that rim right at the front there, and that's where you support on the bench. You support on the bench like that. And you don't go like this. You want to be like that on this part here. So there are a few steps involved in the process of grinding. So we need to make sure that the hopper is full of coffee beans. Next step, we want to start grinding. So I'm just going to turn on the grinder for a little bit. Allow it to fill for maybe 10 seconds or so. Now we look in, and there's a mound of grinds ready to be dispensed. So by turning that lever, I have filled up this portafilter. Next step, just want to settle once nicely, and then with the back of my hand, just going to go across the front. So you're going to be able to see, sweep the rest of the grinds in there. So it's almost perfectly flat now. The actual tamping process. Tamping. That fits perfectly there, just on the edge of the bench, and a little bit of pressure, and then twist to tie it off. We'll be able to see that there are a few coffee grinds around the edge there. To get rid of those, just tap once, and that should get rid of most of them. And then we just, because we've loosened up the puck, we want to tighten that up again. Now there are a couple of little coffee grinds on the surface there, so I'm just going to quickly do that. And that's gotten rid of most of them, so I can just do a final wipe, and that is good to go into the machine, because this gets in close contact with the rubber seal up in the machine, so you want this to be clean as you can, just to reduce the mess that you're going to get. So a good sign that this is properly tamped is that you're going to be able to hold it upside down without the grinds falling out. It's a bit nerve-wracking to do it first, but you'll get used to it over time. tamping process. A little bit of force, one tap, swipe. Grab it the most by doing that swing, get rid of the final bit there. From this stage for the tamping, it's going to be as quickly as this. Done, ready to go. I'm going to have two examples. In the first example, I'm going to wait and then tamp. Done. Okay, second example, I'm going to start immediately and then dispense it as quickly as I can. You will notice in the first example that this is demonstrating the rate of grind is slower than what we can dispense. By waiting for 5 to 10 seconds for the grinding chamber to fill up first, we only need to operate the grinding lever 10 times, 5 to 10 times if it's filled up. However, in the second example, we just turned on the grinder and started dispensing straight away. We use that grinding lever probably 3 times more than the first example. So it pays to wait for a little while before you start to dispense. That way you can dispense more with each swing. I'm going to let this fill up. To demonstrate, I'm just going to show you what the chamber looks like now. There's a lot of coffee grinds in there. This is not what you want to do when you only have 1 or 2 coffees to make, because coffee gets stale very quickly when it's been ground. So how quickly can you do 2? Alright, well, the grinder's off now. I've got all the grinds I need. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, that's the first one done. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4.5. That's the second one. You only had to use this 8 times, 9 times to fill up 2 of these. So about 4 or 5 swings of this each. In contrast to my regular grinder, we have the Swift grinder. You've probably seen it used a few times before, but basically this inserts the same way as it would into the coffee machine. I will go into the coffee machine the same way. So I'll take that out nice and clean, give it a good wipe, and then it goes in, and then you press a button. Now, that is also already tamped. This Swift grinder, I've got a free hand. This Swift grinder inside here has a driving shaft with a couple of big blades on it. These blades look like petals, and these petals constantly move around and push down. They spiral down into this basket here and make sure that it's nice and flat. It dispenses the same amount of coffee each time. The only other thing you have to do is that sometimes you can get some coffee grinds right on the lugs here and on the rim of that basket there. So you just do a combination of both. So that's got rid of most, and just a little wipe. And then that's good to go into the machine as it is. So this cuts down on some extra time. You literally just have to put this in, press the button, and 20 seconds later, you've got your shot here. It doesn't matter who presses that button, you're going to end up with the same product like this. So it's ideal for someone with limited amount of knowledge how to use this, and then you can just basically tell them to put it in and press a certain button. So whatever your process is, whatever you're making, it is very, very important to learn how to use a manual grinder. because this is probably what you're going to come across. There's one more bonus topic that I want to mention, and it's how do you clean the grinder? How do you separate things? All you'd have to do is to push this in, and there's a little screw at the back that you unscrew. Make sure you hold this in, and you can lift the whole thing out. There's no danger of it spilling. You may need to grind through the top bit here. This has a safety mechanism as well, so this hopper needs to be on the machine for this to be able to grind. So I'm going to go ahead now and grind. You can get grinds becoming fainter and fainter. Now we can take this back off again. Look inside the hopper there, that's how the grinding mechanism works. A little trick when you become comfortable with it as a barista. Some coffees will be oilier than others, so you can probably see that needs a really good clean. What did we cover here today? We covered the barista training principles of using a manual grinder and to apply this to other types of grinder, such as the Swift grinder behind me that I use on a frequent basis. The idea behind my reasoning is that if you understand the basics and all the different components of the manual grinder, as mentioned earlier in the video, then you can apply this to any other sort of grinder that you come across. There are all sorts of devices on the market, and it will be very time consuming to go through each one. I'm just going to give you the experience that I have with the grinders that I've been using, and you should be able to translate that across to any other grinder that you come across. For me, I could walk into any cafe and learn any of the other advanced types of grinders that they may have, because they operate with the same principles. Every grinder has a hopper, it has a grinding mechanism, it has a grinding chamber, and a method of dispensing it into the portafilter. You're going to find that each barista has their own amount of pressure that they use to tamp if they're not using an auto tamping system. I have covered some of the do's and don'ts of being a barista in a previous video, but the ones that come to mind for me earlier on, don't just turn on the grinder and then start pulling that grinding lever, because it's not giving it enough time for the grinding chamber to fill up. So that's just extra movement that you're doing, extra noise that you're doing, and you're not getting a better result with the amount of effort that you're putting into. If you only have one coffee to make sure that you only grind up enough coffee for that one coffee. Otherwise, the next customer that might come in 5 minutes time, they might come in 10 minutes time. And in that time, the grinds that are in the grinding chamber, they've been exposed to air, and that air has started to degrade them, to make them stale, if you like. That's one habit that I notice a lot of new baristas do. They will be so focused on trying to do everything, because there are a few steps involved, that they'll turn on the grinder and forget to turn it off. So it's going to keep filling up and keep filling up. That's okay when it's busy, but if it's quiet and you only have one drink to do, that's going to cause the coffee to get stale, the coffee that's just been ground. It's much better to leave it as beans and then grind it as you need it. Don't let go of that grinding lever, because it does spring back to its original spot, but if you hold on to that, it's not going to wear out the mechanism as fast.